Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the City of St. Louis Board of Aldermen Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning Committee for December 15th, 2022. It's 9:02 a.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Cohn. Alderman Coder.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Guenther.
Here.
Alderman Narayan.
Here.
Alderman Todd.
Here.
Alderwoman Evans.
Present.
Alderwoman Peel. Alderman Grass.
Here.
Alderman Lappy.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
Alderwoman Walker.
Present.
Chair Davis.
Present.
Alderman Cohn.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Peel.
Here.
We have 12 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now ask for approval of the minutes from December 8th, 2022.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from our December 8th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Alderman Cohn.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Guenther.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans.
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel.
Aye.
Alderman Grass.
Aye.
Alderman Lappy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys.
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker.
Aye.
Alderwoman Chair Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. We have 12 aye votes.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have listed Board Bill 125, and we heard that last week. So we're gonna
The clerk, I'm sorry, the clerk sent out a new agenda and he removed it.
oh, great. Because see, I've been just jumped out of another meeting, so I don't have the new agenda in front of me yet.
Yes,
I will in just a second.
all right. He
Thank
did
you.
put it in the drive.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful for all of us. Let me take a moment here.
He also, I'm sorry, removed it from the speakers list as well.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to allow you to guide us through. Our next item on the agenda is
The next item on the agenda is Board Bill number 64, introduced by Alderman Shane Cohn, Alderman Dan Guenther, Alderman Bill Stevens, Alderwoman Megan Green. An ordinance approving policies and procedures in connection with the consideration of development proposals, amending Ordinance Number 71504 and containing severability and emergency clauses.
Thank you very much. Alderman Cohn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the committee taking the time this morning to start the conversation and deliberative process around this particular board bill. As most of you are aware, this was introduced earlier this year, right before we went down for summer recess. And since actually before it was even introduced, I've been getting feedback from various parties with respect to that board bill, including our clerk, who indicated that he would like to see part of the board bill modified or removed because it's not necessarily specific to the rest of the board bill. So, you know, I'm kind of prefacing this conversation with there's many conversations that are still ongoing, including some that I've had this week with the administration around language pertaining to various SLDC boards and commissions and the requirements thereof, and how we might need to modify some language there. So I do expect to put forward a committee substitute with respect to this board bill. I obviously have not done so yet, otherwise you would have had it 24 hours in advance. But I wanted to make sure that we're starting to engage the public in the conversations around this process and also engage them and their thoughts. But just to kind of go through the board bill itself.
Excuse me, sir. May I interrupt you for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
So, because I was taking some notes. So, Elsa, you're anticipating some additional information from SLDC and possibly some other conversations you're having. So would you like to just hold this, and then when we talk about it, we talk about it in its entirety? Because you know how information gets out and then it gets confused and then it comes back, and maybe we should wait.
No, I'd rather start. Madam Clerk, are there people signed up to speak with respect to the board bill?
Yes, we do. We have Neil Richardson, Lance Knuckles, Rob R, Zach Wilson from the city staff from SLDC.
Well,
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that has signed up?
No, we have yes, we have one in support, Mr. Chris Doyer.
Okay. So I would, because there's most of the substance of the bill is not going to be changing. It's just a few parts that there's edits and amendments, but I'd like to do that in a more clean fashion with a committee substitute. But for the most part, I want to walk through. I do want to walk through with the primary substance of the bill today and focus on those.
No, I would really rather wait, because I don't want to get this out there until you have everything together, and then you don't have the members from the administration here either. Well, so that is an important part of it too.
So respectfully, Madam Chair,
and we won't be voting either. So
no, I anticipate that we're not going to be voting. That's what I've been sharing with people, as this was scheduled. But I do this has been out there. It's been out there for several months now. So, whatever conversations you're anticipating may occur as a result of this being out in the public have already happened. It's been online, posted on our website for many months now. So I would like to continue to, at least have the conversation around the sections that are not changing substantively, and would like to make sure that the committee is aware of them, that the public is aware of them, and then we can have, there's one person who, is from the general public that I'd like to get their input from. And then also we do have representatives from SLDC here, and they are, really the ones that are probably most impacted by this board bill. So would like for them to be able to be on the record in terms of their feedback. So I would like to at least go through the bill and take any comments or whatnot from the folks that have signed up this morning.
Okay.
And I'll be brief. I will be brief.
I know, but I'm going to share with you that I know that the administration has suggested that we hold it until everything is put together. I'm not sure if they talked to you about it.
I have not heard the administration say to hold the bill. So the last conversation I had with the mayor's chief of staff, they said that they had some amendments that they are currently considering and working with the city councilor's office on, but not that we need to delay or hold up the bill. And I've already advised them that we were not planning on taking a vote at today's hearing, that this was simply a matter of continuing the conversation publicly around the board bill. And they were fine with that.
All right, go right ahead.
Okay. I'm just going to highlight some of the various sections here, and then, without going into too much detail, we'll allow the committee to ask questions of myself or members of SLDC, but would also like to turn it over to the folks from SLDC to provide their feedback and input as well. So the primary sections of this board bill that will be moving forward, one focuses on transparency. Currently, the various decision-making bodies over at SLDC do not have the same level of transparency that we have here at our own body. So making sure that all meetings are live streamed, that they're recorded, and that they're publicly available on websites, I think is really important for transparency in this process. And so, and then also making sure that they provide a publicly available annual compliance report that's also provided to the mayor, the comptroller, the board of aldermen, and the chairperson of HUDs. Section 3 is essentially addressing an incentive review policy and procedures. So in effect, what it does is outlines a framework for development proposals and a process that should be followed for those proposals. And then this is really where we get into some of the meat of the board bill with respect to how we are enforcing our policies and how we are trying to, I don't want to say remove alder people from the incentive process, but I think putting a arm's length distance between alder people and the incentive process, we can never remove an alder person from the development process. Under state law, we are responsible for passing ordinances that relate to that. But this at least provides a fair and level playing field for developers, and with respect to providing SLDC the ability to work with people and their proposals for various developments in our neighborhoods, while at the same time providing a framework to do so. Then we have also a section in here with respect to letters of support from alderpersons. I know that in my 14 years down here at the Board of Aldermen, while I haven't had the same level of development that has taken place in other parts of the city, with respect to things like tax incentives, such as a tax abatement, which is really where most of the opportunity for incentives have happened in my neck of the woods. We would typically be required to send a letter that, or maybe not even required, but would still send a letter on behalf of a developer or property owner for a tax abatement, and oftentimes that would include a recommendation of how much that individual or corporation was willing to or wanting to move forward with the project. So this is basically a framework for the letters to basically say that we can still provide those letters of support. They're not required for SLDC to initiate a process with respect to development, and that they really should put the responsibility of determining the length and amount of the incentive on SLDC, and the alderperson should not be providing that information directly to SLDC in the form of a letter of support. Those sections really, Madam Chair, are the ones that will be the primary focus of this board bill. And with that, I will turn it over to SLDC. I believe Director or President, CEO, I don't even know what his title is anymore with the new changes over at SLDC, but Chairman Richardson.
CEO.
CEO, thank you. CEO Neil Richardson, or I believe in my conversations, Zach Wilson, Vice President over at SLDC for incentives, is also on the line.
Okay. Oh, thank you. President Richardson, if you'd like to go ahead and start your presentation and include any of your staff that you feel is necessary. Mr. Orr, I see you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning. Yes, sir. Are you going to fill in for President Richardson?
Well, basically, SLDC is here this morning to receive the public input that may be presented this morning. We are continuing to have conversations with the mayor's office and now President Green's office. We met with the policy director. We understand that there have been a number of changes proposed by President Green. We're taking a look at those. I know the city councilor's office, as Alderman Cohn mentioned, they're aware that those conversations are ongoing. So we weren't really here to present anything other than answer any specific questions someone may have about the process. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else that need to speak? Alderman Cohn?
Not from the city on behalf of the board, Bill. I would say I'm certainly open to taking questions from the committee and or hearing from the public with respect to their feedback.
Okay. What I'd like to do is to go ahead and allow the one speaker to give their input from the public. Madam Clerk, could you give me the name again, please?
Yes, ma'am. His name from the list to speak in, he needs to be sworn in. Mr. Chris Dwyer, I believe that's how he pronounces it.
Okay. Is it Mr. Dyer, are you available?
I'm not seeing him either. I'm not seeing him.
I don't see him on my list of participants. So, and if you don't see him,
He's not on the
okay.
attendee side, but he was added to this list, the last one, but I'm not seeing him on here.
Okay.
I'm not
well,
seeing him on the attendee list either, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, maybe, things happen. So when we have our next meeting, because every meeting now is publicized, including public speaking, so he'll have a chance at the next one. Was there anything else that you would like to share?
I don't have anything further to share, Madam Chair. Just, if there's members of the committee that have any questions, I'd be happy, or feedback, I'd be happy to, entertain either.
All right, we'll go to the committee.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but Chair Davis, there is Mr. Jerry Connolly. He's here in opposition of it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Mr. Connolly? Mr. Connolly?
Yes, Madam Chair, I am here.
Okay, so let me swear you in and then you can make your presentation. Do you solemnly swear that the information you give is truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay. Just to clarify, when I did register to speak here, my position on this is no position, as in neither in favor or against. You know, I'd really like to see what the changes are before actually taking a formal stance. I think I'd just like to start off with, I really appreciate Alderman Cohn and the co-sponsors for moving this forward, particularly on the transparency aspects. You know, it's very important that the development boards be live streamed or at least archived on the YouTube channel for the city. There's also basically 2.5 years worth of Zoom meetings that could be uploaded with modest effort. They are available from Sunshine requests, and probably some of the committee members may not be aware of this, that the Sunshine portal that the city has, the records that SLDC provide to those who submit requests are not actually available for the general public to access through the portal. And that is of grave concern because the agency seems to have made a decision that other city entities, you know, have gone forward and made those records available to anyone through the portal. Currently for SLDC, it's just the request that does that. I think, you know, in light of the indictments and the activities that led to those, I think greater transparency in a development process may have made that less likely to have occurred in the first place. And the role of elected officials, you know, shouldn't be to, you know, walk someone's application through SLDC and fill out the numbers themselves, as allegedly happened in one situation. But I think totally taking the elected official out of the process and effectively kind of shifting some of the balance of the power into SLDC, which is, you know, essentially it's not an accountable entity and has operated with little transparency for a long time. That also presents some challenges. So I really hope this body, the Development Corporation and the Mayor's Office look at that very, very closely if they are, you know, making major changes to the procedures. The vast majority of projects, once they go to the first round of approval at a development board, end up being approved by the Board of Aldermen. And I don't know how many older people have attended LCRA meetings. Like maybe when it was in person, I maybe saw 4 or 5 over about a 4-year period actually attend. But the boards, it's extremely unusual for them to actually vote anything down. If a vote is taken, invariably it passes. And I think it's quite alarming. In the last 6 months, there have been 3 major projects that have received the preliminary approval from the Port Authority or LCRA, for which an application was not available when a sunshine request was submitted, which makes me ask, how did SLDC staff make a recommendation to that board if there wasn't a detailed application already on hand? And I think it would, I think if SLDC and the Planning Commission and other staff could actually walk the committee through how the process works, you know, I think not just the SLDC procedure, I think the planning agency procedure also needs to be looked at. The role of outside entities, you know, SLDC has staff from the city council's office, but they also utilize outside bond counsel in the form of Gilmore and Bell, who are also involved in, you know, responding to the state auditor, as in drafting the city's responses. And, you know, I'm concerned as to who is doing the legal work for the city and how accountable they are to the elected officials. So I would look forward to the opportunity to review the changes, the amendments that come forward, and also encourage Madam Chair and the board sponsor, the bill sponsor, if you could schedule committee meetings that occur in the evening or on the weekend to give more opportunity for the public to engage in this process. That ends my comments for now. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair. Hello.
Madam Chair is muted. Can somebody unmute her?
So I don't show myself muted.
I
unmuted you,
was
ma'am.
frozen.
You were muted, but I had unmuted you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Alderman Cohn, any questions?
Yeah, if we're going to have this discussion, I got a couple, Alderman. I guess I'm in section 3, page, what page is it? I'll just give the board bill page number. I guess it's page 8 of 23. What is this? Section 3A. It mentions development costs of more than $10 million. So solicit public input prior to a development proposal report to the Board of Aldermen. Notice by mail to residents nearby. I mean, I guess in this, what do you envision here? Is this going to get tightened up? It just seems rather broad and sort of archaic to be sending a bunch of notices by mail. And I mean, what's the radius? Have you given any thought? I mean,
Yeah, we
how
haven't.
far out we need to go?
I think we kind of use a standard 500-foot radius with respect to notifications in general in the city. So I would be fine, adding more specific language there as well. But yes.
Okay, so that's something that jumped out at me. Another thing, right below that, in I guess D, if the development proposal requests tax incentives related to a project expected to cost at least $1 million, is that total development costs of at least $1 million?
Yes.
Okay. It just differs from the total development costs of $10 million above. I would just be consistent there. More broadly, I'm trying to find the section it's also in 3, it's on page 12 of 23 at the bottom, where you talk about inclusionary housing policy. You specifically reference a HUD model lease form that has to be used. And I just don't know. I'm not by any means an expert in affordable housing, but have you run this by affordable housing folks? I mean, are we pigeonholing them into a specific type of affordable project by requiring that lease form? I mean, I don't know if that's, a standard for all affordable housing projects, or do we want to get into that level of specificity of requiring a certain lease form in this ordinance?
So I think it was a matter of trying to make sure that there was some level of specificity in terms of a requirement. I have not reached out to the affordable housing folks. I would be glad to do so, but I think it was more a matter of trying to provide a consistent and specific requirement. But I would be happy to look into that further.
Yeah, my concern is just, if it's some state, affordable program that maybe has different requirements and might use a different lease that might, I certainly understand why you guys wanted to have some affordable housing component or payment in lieu thereof to the trust. I just don't know that, if you specify the lease, if we're going to get ourselves in a situation where we're excluding some affordable housing projects, from consideration.
Duly noted. I have it in my notes here, Alderman. Thank you.
All right. And then lastly, the whole thing about letters of support. I get it. As someone with a lot of development in my ward, something for years I've said is, look, I'm not going to specify an incentive level in a support letter because I haven't looked at the numbers yet and I don't know. So this language, so a letter of support under what you're proposing would have to include, you'd have to include this language, I guess. What happens if we don't? Is there a penalty, or does the letter get thrown out? Oh, I see. There is a penalty. Okay, never mind. That's not a question. I answered it myself. That's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Boyd. Has Alderwoman Boyd come over yet? No. No. Okay, Alderman Guenther.
No questions, just interested in what the changes will be in the future here, and hope to work on it to get it passed through. So thank you, Alderman.
All right, Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions today. Same as my colleague from the 9th. Interested in looking at the committee sub to come. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Todd.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Alderwoman Evans.
I have no questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Peel.
I have no questions right now. Would like to see the changes. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Gross. Alderman Gross. Alderman Lappy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions at this time. I also am interested to see the more complete version.
Okay. Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I do not have any questions.
Okay. Alderwoman Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just an in general question for the Alderman of the 25th Ward, Shane. Help me understand the purpose of this. Is the purpose because a couple of bad apples did something, so we need to change the entire process? Or is the purpose like the more you take away responsibilities that the alderperson have, you know, what does the alder people end up doing? Like, what will be the purpose of an alderperson if we keep removing things that they're responsible for in their ward?
Thank you, Alderwoman. I don't view this as removing any responsibilities from the role of what an alderman already does. We don't currently, review the numbers and applications of developments in our wards. We, very much, most of us rely upon SLDC to do that already. So that doesn't change in this board bill. The only thing that from that perspective that would really substantively change is, how we engage with SLDC on development in our ward. And then, also providing a framework for the incentive process that's a little bit more transparent for developers. And then, lastly, that transparency piece, which has really been missing. And frankly, I think we need to have more of that across city government as a whole. I would very much be interested in, sponsoring bills or co-sponsoring bills for other boards and commissions outside of excuse me, I have a frog in my throat, outside of SLDC. I've had, feedback and my own experiences as an example, even with like the Civil Service Commission, in terms of posting requirements, notices, and transparency in their meetings as well. So that doesn't really have anything to do with, taking anything away from us as alderpersons or our authority over here at the Board of Aldermen, as much as it is just creating a more transparent environment within city government for our constituents.
I guess that's where my confusion is, because you said when you started your statement that SLDC already does the numbers. they run the numbers. You're not the expert. I'm not the expert. That's what they do. So if that's what they do already, I'm lost on the purpose, you know, because I don't see it not being transparent. When we come to these meetings and you ask for this or you ask for that form, you know, you get it. So I'm lost in the purpose of Board Bill 64, because that's what they do, run the numbers, and it's transparent. If you ask for something, you get what you ask for. So I'm slow. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
So I think, Alderwoman, that from a transparency perspective, that might be accurate for alderpersons, but it's certainly not accurate for people outside of the Board of Aldermen. Like I said, and what's been mentioned in some of the comments, you know, the various boards and commissions that comprise, you know, various bodies over at SLDC, they don't archive their meetings, so the public, if they're unable to attend, don't have access to them. There's, you know, oftentimes requests that go unanswered from even sunshine requests, which is a legal responsibility and requirement of our city to respond to those. They're either delayed or unresponsive. And so this does provide a level of transparency to the public. I agree with you, you know, from an aldermanic perspective, you know, SLDC is generally responsive, albeit I have had, you know, conversations in the past where getting information from SLDC has been, and LRA in particular, getting information from LRA as an alderperson has been very challenging in the past. So I would say that, you know, even as an alderperson over my 14 years, I've experienced some, you know, hurdles and challenges with SLDC, but the public experiences that, you know, tenfold. So I think, you know, at least in my experience, you know, we do need to bring a level of transparency to SLDC. And just from an aldermanic perspective, I think where there has been some ambiguity with sending over letters of support. And again, I mentioned this, but, you know, for most of us, you know, we don't have multi-million-dollar projects that are going on in our neighborhoods. For the most part, it's, you know, tax abatements for projects that are, you know, under $1 million. And in the past, and probably still to the present, there have been situations where alderpersons have sent over letters of recommendation that included specific amounts based off of a request from someone versus an actual financial analysis. So that's where this board bill would basically direct that we can still provide letters of support as alderpersons for projects in our ward, but we would defer to SLDC with respect to going through the analysis of the project and making recommendations based off of, you know, either our incentive criteria or their evaluation process.
Thank you, Alderman, the 25th. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to give a couple of comments. The whole letter writing thing, I think, just for the Board of Aldermen as a whole, whether it's talking about a project or talking about a street closing or talking about a special event, whatever it is, we are not organized. We are not systematic. I think things need to be structured just like any other corporation, where there is a specific form that is used by all that says the same thing, that is forwarded to the various executive branch offices that actually do the work. Because I'm going to say it again, alderpersons do not facilitate expenditures on any level. We do not sign contracts. We do not spend money. We allocate through legislation, but we do not facilitate and spend. So one of the things that I've noticed over the years, and it's always bothered me, that you can talk to people and the different versions of how they have interacted on the same types of projects and or the same level of expectation is very different. So it is confusing. And I think if we all stayed in our lane and allowed the executive branch to do their job and stop trying to be all of everything, either in word or letter, it would be very, very simple for everyone. And so I don't write a letter to anybody telling them I support anything about any percentage of anything, because that's not what I do. Now, I will give them the contact information. I will connect them in an email to those departments who do the work. And if they deem necessary to ask me after they have come to their conclusion, will I support it? That's fine. And if they don't ever ask me and they move forward and do the work on behalf of the city of St. Louis, that's good too. So we do need to probably make sure that this is done in a better way. And I also kind of chuckled to myself when we talked about someone mentioned about the different leases and things like that. Now HUD is going to slap us on our hand and say, stay in your lane, because they have all the data over there in those various departments to follow the guidelines depending on where the funds come from for those projects. And we don't need to be involved at all. That is not anything we need to be involved with. We have enough to do with a lot of other things. And so I'm just excited to see what the outcome is from the various branches of the executive groups over there. And we have all those committees. And again, the public needs to know that those boards and commissions are appointed by the mayor. They're staffed by the mayor's directors. They are not employees of the Board of Aldermen. And when I heard about the rare occasion that I heard about of someone having that much input in LRA, I couldn't believe it. I don't know what everybody was thinking about during that process, but at the end of the day, I've never been able to directly say anything on behalf of land or anything over there. So it's interesting, but we have a long way to go with this. I'm sure that it's going to take a while for this to, get to the point of passing something that has everything in it. And something that no one talks about, but I will, is if we want all this transparency, we need to use some ARPA dollars so that we can include the public and make sure that the SLTV department has up-to-date equipment, more staff, and most especially having all of the ability to do evening and weekend meetings, because that's the only way you can assure that more public input is there. And I talked way too long, but all of this is interesting because we've been working on it for a while, long before this board bill was presented. And a lot of things have been changed over the years, but a lot more needs to be changed. So Alderman Cohn, Board Bill 64, I will let you have the last words as we move on.
For this board bill, am I muted or?
I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing the opportunity to hear this board bill and gather additional feedback as we continue to work through putting together a committee substitute And I look forward to continuing the conversation and working with our colleagues on a better bill that addresses the concerns of the public and others with respect to these processes. So as I mentioned at the beginning of my opening remarks, I'm not expecting a vote today, but would like to, I guess, put this on the informal calendar for the committee, as it were, and take it up when we resume meetings.
Okay, that sounds good. And if anybody has any ideas, make sure that you get them to Alderman Cohn, or if you just want to send it to the board clerk so it gets included somehow, some way, because this is a very, very, very important process. And I think that since we're going to finally look at it in the way it should be looked at, this is a good thing. And we have a lot of work before us. A lot of money has to be spent in many different forms and fashions, and the expectations of all those entities that the funds come from requires our city government system to be much more adequate and professional. So I thank you again for this. And I'd like to move on now to Madam Clerk, our next item on the agenda.
Item number 2, Board Bill number 145, introduced by Alderwoman Marlene Davis. This board bill determines that the tax increment financing plans listed in Exhibit A that were established 5, 10, 15, or 20 years ago are making satisfactory progress, except as noted, as required by Section 99.865.3 RSMO.
Thank you very much. Alderman Coder, can you guide the process on this?
I certainly can, Madam Chair. Okay, so we are on board bill. Is this 146, 145? 145. Madam Chair, you're recognized, or do you want me to defer to city staff?
City staff, please.
Okay. All right, I will turn it over to Director Richardson or whoever he would like to speak from his team.
Thank you, Alderman. This is Zach Wilson from SLDC.
Hey, Zach.
This is our annual report. We had to follow by state statutes, give you an update on TIFs at the 5, 10, 15, and 20-year marks. We have prepared a PowerPoint that should be pretty quick. Andrew Knob from our InSTEMS department will go through that with you real quick. Okay.
Perfect.
I'm just gonna share my screen here. Hopefully you can hear me and I'm not muted.
We can hear you. Go right ahead, share your screen.
Alrighty. Hopefully you see a presentation.
Yes, we do.
See it.
Okay, so as Zach said, this is part of our requirements. We do have a number of different things related to TIF that we're required to do, and as part of our ongoing, monitoring of TIFs. And so this is to meet that requirement. We have a couple of slides here at the beginning that are going to hopefully give you just kind of an overall picture of TIFs over time that we think are helpful to include as well to this group. So that's what we have right here. So there's been a total of 146 redevelopment plans, so TIFs approved over time that resulted in 124 agreements that were actually executed. 35 TIFs have either been retired, so they carried out their life, or they were paid off, or have been terminated, meaning they never happened, or for one reason or another. On the right side here, we have kind of a construction status summary here. So 128 have been substantially complete, which would allow the TIF to be activated. Partially complete, those are usually projects that maybe have multiple RPAs or very large project plans. And so the TIF can be activated when part of it's completed and the other pieces of the project haven't. And then we have 5 under construction. Most of those are obviously the most recent TIFs. Here's just a couple metrics and estimates. So the top table, the first line, what we're showing is the TIF amount as a percentage of the total project cost. We exclude Northside Regeneration from here because it's a gigantic TIF and it kind of skews the number actually in kind of a less conservative way, to be honest. And so we don't approve TIFs that are where the TIF is greater than 50% of project costs. And as we can see here, that the average overall is about 12.6%. TIFs over the course of our history, currently those projects have about 12,500 full-time equivalent jobs. We do that. We don't know exactly the numbers. What we do is we get earnings tax numbers from the comptroller's office, and we use average annual wage for the region to estimate what that equates to in jobs. About 7,600 residential units, 1,800 hotel rooms, and over 13 million commercial square feet. The bottom table here is we have to send out a notice each year. This is, again, numbers that are tracked and kept by the comptroller's office, summarizing pilots and EATs collected for just fiscal year 2022. So this is not over time. Pilots of nearly 23 million, EATs collected of over 11 million. There's remaining principal of about $490 million. Debt paid over this last fiscal year was 17 million. And pay-as-you-go, to be honest, I don't know a whole lot I don't understand pay-as-you-go very well, but we have $3.7 million pay-as-you-go commitments left. So this graph here is hopefully helpful, showing the number of TIFs approved by year for TIFs that are still active and retired. So basically, they actually happened. There was 90s, not very many. Throughout the 2000s, there was a great deal of them, many of which you'll see on the presentation today, peaking in 2004 with about 19 projects approved that year. In the most recent years, there's obviously been a lot less, and in some years we have none approved.
Hold on, thank you, Andrew. Pause on the slide for a second. As you see, in the next few years, we'll be seeing a majority of our TIFs being retired here in the future. So if you just add a good summary here would be adding 23 years to any of these dates, any of these years, and you can come up with an estimate when these TIFs will be retired. So next 5 to 6 years, you'll see our number of TIFs drop considerably, active TIFs, I would say. So I just need to make the public aware and the Board of Aldermen aware of what's coming soon. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. All right, so now we'll get in. I'm going to run through this quickly and we have narratives about each one of these projects that we distributed to you, so we can talk about that more. You can read it yourself, but I'll just quickly talk about each project. So these are projects with their 20-year anniversary in fiscal 2022. The first is the Louderman building. It was a $15 million loft condominium project. It's a nice picture of it there. The second project here is Paul Brown Arcade Building downtown. Both of these have been downtown so far. It's a $47 million project, apartments and some ground floor commercial. Walter Knoll Florist, a $3 million project in the Gate District East neighborhood for Walter Knoll Florist's location. Grace Lofts, an 8-story 24-unit apartment building, $24 million project cost. Terracotta Lofts, 99 condos, big parking garage, the cost of $24 million. And we have Southtown Center here, large retail center, cost of $30 million, 97,000 square feet. It's doing fairly well. Printers Loft, another loft project downtown, $26.5 million project with 74 condos. Windows Loft, a nearly $16 million project, again, 33 lofts, loft condos, and 70,000 square foot of commercial space. Leaving downtown, so Soulard Market Apartments, 132 units, just under $30 million in project costs. The Cloister, smaller project, 21 rental units at the cost of $3.8 million. City Hospital, there's been a few RPAs here. This is the City Hospital, the Georgian, 101 residential condos, $24 million in project costs. Fashion Square, 96 units, 48,000 square feet of commercial, $29.2 million in project costs. Moving on to our 15-year anniversary projects. There's a few of those as well. So 1910 Locust, it's solely commercial space, just under 25,000 square feet, $8.7 million in project costs. Magnolia Thurman, residential project, 36 units, $4.3 million in project costs. 1001 Locust, so this is, again, just office space, 50,000 square feet, $10 million project cost. The Laurel, I think it's a beautiful building, 205 apartments, a little bit of retail space on the bottom as the Blues Museum, and Sugar Fire right now, $142 million in project costs. Carondelet South, there's a few of these coming up here. So this is District 1 of the former Coca-Cola plant, 166 residential units, 59,000 square feet of commercial space, and a project cost of over $50 million. Number 2, so the school, commercial, educational, social service uses, project cost of $6.6 million. Carondelet South, number 4, $2 million project, eight residential units, 8,500 square feet of commercial. And now we're moving on to our 10-year anniversary projects here. This is 100 North Euclid, so 177 units and the Whole Foods on the ground floor, and a project cost of just under $73 million. Cortex, multiple RPAs. I think we all know a lot about Cortex, massive project, obviously. This is Northeast Hampton Berthold. It's the Mercedes dealership on Hampton. Total project cost of just under $20 million. There's about 70 jobs there currently. Carondelet Coke, large 650,000 square feet industrial/commercial campus developed at the cost of $69 million. Just before I get into the terminated TIFs, just want to mention that there's actually 6 projects that have been terminated over time. I'm just going to briefly name them: Choteau Newstead, Laclede Powerhouse, Nadia Place, Station G Apartments, 1900 Washington, and Carondelet South District number 3. And again, our narrative describes those in more detail if you're curious. So on to our retired TIFs. Or talk a little bit more. So since these are retired and they've lapsed, we can summarize some numbers about them. We're going to talk about cost, TIF amount, assessed value, taxes collected, what it's appraised at now. So West Pine Court, Central West End, is a $3.5 million project with a $300,000 TIF amount. It's currently assessed at $234,000, which equates to an appraised value of $1.2 million. And it generates $19,000 in annual property taxes currently. The Art of Living building, it's a $6.5 million project, $1.1 million TIF. It was originally assessed at $180,000 before the TIF, currently assessed at just under $1.4 million, or a $4.3 million appraised value. It's generating $1.1 million in pilots, or it did generate $1.1 million in pilots and $1 million in EATs, and it generates $136,000 in annual property taxes currently. And finally, we have 1312 Washington Avenue, $3.2 million project, $400,000 TIF. It was originally assessed at just $18,000. It's currently assessed at over $1 million, appraised at $5 million. Over the course, it collected $600,000 in pilots, $50,000 in EATs, and it generates $87,000 in property taxes currently. And then so just this is here a table summarizing all of the TIFs that we talked about today, including the terminated ones, and it provides greater detail on each in case you are curious or have specific questions. And that should do it. We're happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Knopp, for that. I will go through the committee list right here and see who's got questions. Okay, I'll start. Alderman Cohn.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Alderman.
I noticed with the retired TIFs, not all of them had the baseline there, but it would be nice to see just what the base was, what the current taxes are, and I think telling the story there that without the TIF, that we wouldn't have the tax revenue coming in off of those properties that we have now is really important for the public to understand some of the nuances around these incentive programs, because frankly, just looking at some of them that did have the baseline, it's dramatically improved our tax base, from that perspective. So I would like to see a little bit more detail in that. Obviously, don't need that today, but it would be nice to see that. Also on the, I think it was page 2 of your presentation, where you had the breakdown of TIFs by year that included both the active and retired TIFs. Maybe if you could use 2 different colors to differentiate which ones of those are active and which ones of those are retired, I think that would also be very helpful.
Yep, we could do that. It's mostly the older ones. And just on your first point there, West Pine Court, it's very old, so it was actually harder for us. We might need to go and ask specifically the assessor's office to get the original numbers, but that's why we didn't include it. Thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Cohn. Alderwoman Boyd. Okay, Alderman Guenther.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my question was along the same lines there as the Alderman from the 25th. That graph that you showed, like the third page of the graph, was it accurate that said that 2018, 2020, and 2022 that there were no new TIFs? Is that was correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then I guess those any of the bills that we worked on were TIFs that were approved beforehand, such as the core tax that we just did, and I guess last week we approved some funding for paving stadium out of Northside regeneration. So okay, so that clears that up. I thought that there were some that we had issued, but I guess those were previously issued, and then we just took the money out. So,
yeah, the activations of current RPAs and active TIFs are not included on that graph. The last 2 TIFs we activate was Kingsway and Foundry Phase 2, RPA 2.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you very much.
Alderman Ryan.
No questions. Thank you.
Alderman Todd.
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderwoman Evans.
No question, Mr. Chair, at this time.
Alderwoman Peel.
Yeah, thank you. I have several questions. One of the questions to Andrew is regarding, you talked about the pay-as-you-go and wanted to know what that is, Andrew.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there'd be someone, maybe Zach would know better. Probably not. We've tried to ask questions of the comptroller's office.
Well, I can answer that, Andrew.
Okay.
We only have a handful of pay-as-you-go. Lafayette Square was one. As the money is collected, that's how they spend the money. So there's very few of them, and that's usually usually a TIF note is issued and money is borrowed against that. And that's how the project is funded. But as pay-as-you-go TIFs, as the money is collected by the city, that's how the improvements are done. So that's the difference.
Zach, to follow up on that, Alderwoman Peel, the Lafayette Square TIF, for example, which has since expired, basically the neighborhood collected the monies as they were generated and put them into projects. They didn't borrow against projected revenues of the TIF. Are there others besides the Lafayette Square one that were pay as you go?
That's the only one I can think of at this time.
Okay. Sorry, Alderwoman Peel. Go ahead.
Thank you for that clarification, Alderman Coder, regarding that detail. I mean, I think it's important that we have that detail regarding that in terms of understanding. I found it kind of alarming in terms of, and I know, Zach, that you provided more information regarding the pay-as-you-go, but I think that's important for us to know what that is. My question, again, another question regarding pay-as-you-go is, are bonds issued on these or not?
Pay-as-you-go TIFs, you're asking? No, they're not.
Okay, great. And then as I was looking at this spreadsheet regarding all the TIFs that you were talking about in this presentation, I'm looking at 17,000 jobs were created, but then, 17,000 jobs were projected, but the estimate was only 781. I'm wondering about that difference over the years.
Yeah, it's generally related to Cortex, and so as we know, part of that isn't complete, and and actually we don't get. I think we might have a mistake on there, but so if you see, there's $15,000 projected for Cortex, and so that's, if you take that out, I mean, that's the whole difference.
So I'm wondering, in terms of reporting on this and the accuracy is, why don't we have numbers for Cortex? And when I brought up Board Bill 114 and 115, that we just passed and has a lot of great things in it for the city regarding affordable housing, and that we have housing at Cortex, which is really great. But, where are the numbers? I mean, I really think it's important, if we're going to give a report like this and an analysis of what's an update, that we have the numbers. So can you explain to me why there are no numbers next to the Innovation District right now?
It honestly might be a mistake. I have pulled up right now, so there's 971 jobs that we report for activated pieces of the RPA. So that might have been an oversight. I apologize for that.
So I would love, after the meeting, getting an updated presentation with the correct information. And it would be nice to also have, as Alder Cohn and somebody else, regarding that graph, and having those graphs just updated so we could see that better. But I really would love to have an updated, presentation with the correct information. But still, 15,000 jobs projected, and over the last, and there's less than 1,000 jobs that have happened. That's just, I feel, poor. And I think that is it right now.
Thank you, Alderwoman. And SLDC staff, if you've got updated numbers for that exhibit, it would be helpful to have those. I think it's something the committee's entitled to. We want to make sure we've got accurate information. Alderman Gross.
No question at this time. This information is helpful and interesting, and I'd like to continue to see it updated. But no
Alderman
question.
Lappy. Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Lappy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just kind of want to underline some of the questions that the Alderwoman from the 17th Ward had. I'd also be curious, do we have a sense with some of these projects that are really kind of centered upon job creation, like the older ones like Southtown and even some of the newer ones like the Carondelet Coke project in my ward. Do we have a sense of like, or do we have a way to put our finger on data that tells us like, okay, there are this many jobs and these are like wage rates for the jobs that have been created by the project? I would just like to have a sense of like, are we creating a lot of quality jobs, or are we creating kind of, basic employment jobs? And I mean, there's a place for both of those, but I'd like to have a sense of what like public money's doing in terms of job creation beyond just the numbers, if it's possible to do that. That's all that I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I do not have any questions. I believe that all of the previous alders who have expressed concern about the numbers and extended information would also be my take on it as well. Thank you.
All right, Alderwoman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions at this time. Just thank you for the presentation to SDL.
Thanks. I see the Alderman from the 25th has his hand up. Alderman Cohn, anything further? Hearing nothing, I see the Alderwoman from the 17th also has her hand up. Anything further, Alderwoman?
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair Kodar. My other question was in terms of the job numbers, where are the details? Are there details available to us in terms of receiving, if we'd like to have the details of how you're getting and deriving of these job numbers? Like, where's the backup evidence? I mean, putting it into a report like this and a summary is great, but I would love to have backup evidence available, or how are these attained in terms of reporting of these jobs? Could you explain how these numbers are attained and where are you getting the evidence for this? That would be great.
I can do that. So we don't get specific job information. What we get is the earnings taxes that, that we can then derive a job estimate. And we actually on one of the slides I had an asterisk that may not have been totally clear, but that explains this, that take those tax dollars and use an annual wage for the region to calculate an estimate of what current jobs are. And that's what we get from the comptroller's office, is the earnings tax. And that's the way that we can make that estimate.
All right, thank you for that explanation.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you. Similarly, I was going to follow up offline here, but since it's already kind of being thrown out there, that just seems, I remember when we started including earning taxes in the TIF, and I was concerned about that, when that started happening. And now hearing kind of the method for calculation of the value of that, and that just seems really problematic. Do you all at SLDC view that as a realistic, viable method for calculating an incentive, taking the citywide earnings tax, averaging it out, and then using that for quote unquote total number of jobs created? I just...
No, we're kind of doing what the staff we have. And moving forward, we're building out a compliance department that will be overseeing these type of things and getting more details. We have basically have a staff of 3 currently. So we're working on this. We're working on more transparency, a website that's very proactive and giving information to the public and to the city departments. But we are working with what we have, and we have future plans to hire more staff to delve into these numbers more and more. As you can tell, majority of these TIFs were passed over almost 20 years ago. So we're doing a lot of background information that we can't pull some information from, but we're working with what we have currently.
I appreciate that, Zach, but we weren't doing TIFs with earnings tax 20 years ago. Most of those have come, probably I would say within the last 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. I believe Alderwoman Casey Star Triplet was the first alderperson to pass a TIF with the earnings tax as a component of it. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But with each of these TIFs, they go before, the various boards and commissions over at SLDC and, are reviewed by staff, and staff make recommendations, and staff come to the Board of Aldermen and indicate that they're either supportive or not supportive. And generally, if they're not supportive, then it won't pass the Board of Aldermen. If they are supportive, then, there's, usually some conversation around that. I would imagine that all of these were supported by SLDC staff when they were making recommendations. And I would think that part of that conversation would be whether or not you have the capacity to actually monitor, review, and ensure compliance with that, and make sure that you're able to calculate these things on a merit basis, so that it's actually based off of the numbers of jobs created in that district with the salary rates of the jobs that are created within that TIF district. So, that is incredibly alarming to me that that's not happening.
I understand, completely understand. And we're moving.
So, but I get why would the staff recommend to approve something when they don't even have the capacity to ensure compliance? Or frankly, calculate it.
Calculate the jobs from which portion are you talking about? The calculations off what?
For the earnings tax specifically.
Okay. We use the formula, the data we get from the comptroller, because that's actually true data that collected by the city and from another city department that we have confidence in. We get job reports from other incentives that is a sheet of paper with a number of jobs on it. So we do receive that type of material, but we like to use backup information that's hard and factual, and that's what we like to use, and that's why we came up with this formula.
Are you using, though, in that formula? So are you just taking cumulative data from the comptroller's office and saying this is the average wage of a St. Louis City employee, and then plugging that into a model based off of the number of jobs in a TIF area? Or are you looking at company A, company B, company C have employees with the city, they are in the TIF area, what is the average salary of those companies? And let me be clear, averages are not accurate at all, because you could literally have 100 employees that are making $13 an hour and have a manager who's making $100,000 an hour, and that gets skewed very much so that it's not an accurate reflection of the number of jobs and the wages that are being paid by that company. But to be clear, I just want to understand the methodology here. So are you taking that comptroller data and then breaking it down by company and then categorizing by company within the TIF boundaries to get numbers? Or are you just aggregating numbers based off of a citywide average and then the number of employees that are in the district that have been volunteered?
Andrew, can you go into more detail? Thank you.
No, so we're reported earnings tax from the comptroller's office, which is, obviously they do the record keeping for these TIFs. They provide the earnings tax numbers for us by each individual TIF as they segregate them out. And we use the average to estimate what that would equate to in actual jobs. So it's obviously not perfect, but possibly it gives us a more consistent measure across all TIFs, where there might be many retail jobs that are going to be very, very hard to access accurately, and some other companies that might be easier to access accurately. And so at least this gives us some comparability across the TIFs. And we do obviously have accurate earnings tax numbers from the comptroller.
But the comptroller's data is by TIF area, and you're not just taking a citywide aggregate, because that's what it sounded like during the presentation initially.
I'm not sure I understand exactly the distinction that you're making.
You're taking the earnings tax data for the TIF area specifically.
Yes, yes.
Okay. That assuades some of my concerns, but I don't think all of them by any means. But it's so important that we have the tools and resources available to be able to accurately reflect what's happening in these TIF districts, so that we are doing the right thing by our constituents, the taxpayers, and obviously our city. So I appreciate the additional clarification there, but man, that just does not sit very well with me, to be honest. So Zach, I look forward to seeing what this compliance team is going to do.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Lappy. You're muted, Alderman Lappy.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to kind of underline, I hope that when we have a more robust compliance team, and maybe this is something that we should think about adding into the bill, I would really strongly push to have some kind of system where we're doing something to kind of assess the quality of jobs that are being created. Because if jobs are part of the plan of a TIF, I just feel like we absolutely have to have some kind of way to assess the quality of those jobs. That's just because I hate to throw public money at bad jobs. And this is something that I've done work on for a long time in different capacities, and I just want to underline that we need to have some kind of way to at least in future projects to assess the quality of the jobs that are being created with public money. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Peel. Alderwoman Peel, sorry.
Thank you. I think this is a robust conversation. I think it's highlighting some gaps regarding SLDC, as Zach Wilson mentioned, in terms of staffing, and as Alderman Cohn talked about in terms of resources, et cetera. And I just go back to, I feel this is, as I started asking these questions and getting more detail, I don't feel like we have gotten enough detail and how problematic this is. And I feel, in terms of us being the legislative branch, and, this is what we need to do in terms of checking the executive branch. I feel that we need to do some reforms in terms of making sure that there's accountability with these jobs numbers, because it doesn't seem we have that. It states in these board bills and proposals and projections, we're going to create this type of job, $65,000. We're going to be creating this many part-time jobs. But it seems that with what we are hearing today, that SLDC is not able to actually accurately project what quality of jobs there are, but we have in the proposals and in how we are presenting this and your recommendations to us as Alder. And, not many people have, or the Alder have the capacity to be looking at this in so much detail as I've been doing, as a city planner, and I'm going to bring it up again. If I was not a city planner and did not have that degree and experience over the last 20 years, I would not be able to ask some of these questions and see the resources. And I'm going to go back to, we need to make sure that not only are the Alder people accountable, but that SLDC is accountable. As an Alder person, I am accountable to my constituents and my residents. We need to make sure that SLDC, who are you accountable to? So my question is now, who is making sure that these numbers are not only accurate, but who is making sure that you are accountable? That's my question right now, is who is making sure that you're accountable? And I think thing is that at this point in time, in this conversation that we're having today, we are holding you accountable. But who is the other party in the middle of this that is making sure that this data is accurate and that we've been going on for years like this? That's just very problematic. And as other alder people have said on this hearing, that's the case. Do you have any reflections regarding that, Zach?
Reflections on
these questions that are being asked.
We know what's occurred. We're moving forward. We have a plan. We're rolling out a new incentive process here starting January, with major compliance part being part of that, with clawbacks built into most of our deals moving forward. We spent a year going through the process and best practices across the country. So we are aware of what's occurred in the past, and we are building off of that. That's right, your mama. But we get real data from the comptroller. We work with real data. We're not making numbers up. So we're
Zach, hold on once.
Okay.
Zach, Alderwoman Boyd, yes, she's now muted. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
We're working with real numbers from the comptroller's office, and that's the most accurate information we can get. We want to pull information from developers, we can do that, but we want something constant and real, and that's why we're using that data. So if you want to give us ideas of how you want to move forward with this, we're open to them. We've been open to during this whole process this past year. Any feedback you guys have, we will gladly take it. How to better the process, how to make it more clear and transparent. We're open. We're here to listen. So if you have comments, concerns, we're listening.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Alderwoman Peel, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Co-Chair Kodar. So that's great. We'll provide comments and feedback. And I'll just state, it's just problematic that we've been going off of this type of data that hasn't been very accurate. And although, in terms of, and I was not here before, in terms of what Alderman Cohn was saying on how this jobs data had been crunched before, and now it is a different way in terms of calculating this. And it seems like it's a weaker way in calculating it. So I think that as alder people and your office, we should look to see on how we can rectify that situation. Why isn't there like a form maybe filled out or something simple like that in terms of the jobs that are being created? And I know Slate has spoken to me regarding jobs creation and, having them help out. Slate is an agency, could help us in terms of determining again, going back to what Alderman Lappy said, the quality of jobs. And I just feel that it's just important that when we are, having these proposals in front of us and we have projected jobs, and we need the accurate information. So I think we're all going to look back on this and we'll work to make this better. So thank you. And I am done with my comments and questions.
Thank you, Alderwoman from the 19th, Chairwoman Davis.
Oh, are you done with committee?
Yes, we do have one. Mr. Connolly is signed up to speak, so I'll defer to you if you want to speak first, or if you want me to go to Mr. Connolly.
I'll wait for the Mr. Connolly.
Okay, Mr. Connolly, are you still with us? Jerry? He's the only member of the public signed up. Going once, going twice. Madam Chair, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. One of the things that I wanted to share on who else is looking at these numbers. So I'll give you an example on a development project that has received MHDC low-income tax credits. And now you have an apartment complex, and in that complex, you have X number of units that are affordable housing units. You have X number of units that could even fall under Section 8, and that development could have possibly also received historic tax credits. And so all of those entities require reporting from that property management system to those various state and federal agencies. An annual report is required. You have to indicate how many employees you have, what their salary is, how many units are rented, what the average household income is, all of those things in order for them to continue to track the project, to know that what it was based on with the infusion of those various incentives are being met. On our end, I think that what normally only happens is when you are approving a TIF or a tax abatement, the developer indicates to you how many construction jobs should be made available in the process, because they, as you know, they can identify that in their pro forma, how many carpenters based on the number of hours for framing and everything that is required to get the building done, and each discipline there after that. Also, they will share with us when the project is completed the anticipation. If it's a mixed unit, they will also share with us based on the square feet, the anticipated type of retail that they would like to attract, and give you an estimate of how many jobs may be available. The follow-up to that probably is where people have some concern. It is after it is finished, because there's no way to know before. Just like with one of our, really two, I know two projects that have RPAs in it in the city right now. Until the RPA is activated, you do not have data, because until you have a project, you cannot estimate or forecast what will be. So you cannot give unknowns until the RPA is activated and you have a project to provide that information with. So there is a lot to do. I think that we've been coming in this direction for a moment, but as was stated by Zachary Wilson, there is even more to be done. I do know from sitting on the SLDC board that they are working on some of those things, because one of the things that they rolled out in October was to make sure that there was transparency, there was economic justice and racial equality in everything that they do on behalf of the city of St. Louis. And all that also includes reporting. And you have to remember, there was a very small staff over there until recently. And now, based on all of the things that we would really like to see reported to us, they are staffing up. And even before the staff is there, they've engaged some professional consultants to support the process and improving it until they're fully staffed. So I feel confident that all those things will be addressed, has all of the eyes, ears, and concerns from that department and from the Board of Aldermen to make sure that that gets done. I do thank them for the report. One of the things I thought was important for the report today was, because it's always a lot of conversation about TIFs and tax abatement. But as you can see, we really don't do that many, and most especially the last 4 or 5 years we haven't. So with that, I would ask for favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I see the Alderman from the 28th has his hand raised. Anything to add, Alderman from the 28th? Briefly, please.
Yeah, just very brief. I guess I quick comment just to start. I don't think we should lose the forest for the trees here. And, some of these things I think are things that we can definitely do better. But I don't necessarily, think that some of these things are what's holding the city back in any meaningful way, that our numbers aren't coming from the separate right sources or anything like that. So that would just want to kind of caution our fellow board members to not lose the forest for the trees here. But then I'm going to I am going to then go very into the trees and into the weeds a little bit on the question. I don't understand why we're getting the data from the comptroller's office and not from the collector of revenues office directly. And I mean, couldn't we just get a list of companies in the TIF and then ask the collector of revenue to give that data directly? Okay.
If someone from SLDC wants to can answer that.
There's some data the collector of revenue cannot share with us, and that's part of the problem. So that's why the comptroller provides the data to us.
Like legally, the collector of revenues office can't provide that kind of data?
I believe so. I'm not into that far in the weeds on that matter, but there's some things they cannot share.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Okay, thank you. I'd add, I think this was a good discussion. These reports have improved quite a bit over the years, and I appreciate the substance. I think, getting these jobs numbers right going forward would be helpful. It would be nice to be able to track that. And I think based on this conversation, I think the SLDC staff hears that message loud and clear. So we look forward to, having better jobs numbers in the future. This report is, not something SLDC is doing out of the kindness of their heart. It's required under state law to be done annually, and they are in compliance, I think, with the state requirements. So with that, the chair will entertain a motion on Board Bill 145.
I move that we pass Board Bill 125.
145.
145, I'm sorry.
All right. With the due pass recommendation?
With due pass recommendation, yes, sir.
All right. It was moved by the Alderwoman from the 27th. Who seconded that? Who was that? Oh, Guenther. Seconded by the Alderman from the 9th that we adopt Board Bill 145 with a due pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cohn.
Pass.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Guenther.
Aye.
Alderman Ryan. Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans. Alderwoman Peel. Alderman Grass.
Aye.
Alderman Lappy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys.
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker.
Aye.
Chair Davis.
Aye.
Alderman Cohn.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans. Alderwoman Peel.
Present.
We have 11 aye votes and 1 present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderwoman from the 27th and adopted or adopted Board Bill 145 with a do pass recommendation. Thank you, committee. I think we have one more board bill on the agenda, Board Bill 146, which I believe, is that also Alderwoman Davis's bill? Yes, it is. Chairwoman Davis, you're recognized on Board Bill 146.
Thank you very much. Will Madam Clerk please read the preamble?
Board Bill number 146, introduced by Alderwoman Marlene Davis. The City of St. Louis is the owner of certain real property located at 3739 Windsor Place, St. Louis, Missouri, 63113, known as the property. The property is a triangular parcel of land next to the John Cochran VA Medical Center, known as the VA. The VA is developing its campus and, in doing so, approached the City of St. Louis to buy the property to complete its development. This development is estimated to cost over $1 billion and would become one of the St. Louis City's most significant federal investments. The proposed bill will positively impact the community as it will help beautify the neighborhood and surrounding areas.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Davis, you're recognized. We have two representatives of the Comptroller's Office signed up to speak. If you'd like to defer to either Ms. Kenner or Mr. Anderson.
I would like to refer to Ms. Kenner, please.
Good morning, Chairwoman Davis and members of the HUS committee. Hope everyone is doing fine this morning.
Thank you.
And I am going to ask Kelly Anderson, Special Assistant to the Comptroller, to present this item to the committee.
Good morning. As the clerk has stated, the city is owner to a triangular piece of property. It's a vacant property unused by the city. In order for the Department of Veteran Affairs, in connection with the John Cochran VA Medical Center, to complete their development, the parcel currently is located to their new parking facility, and that would kind of help enclose their medical campus. And I guess it would also help with completing the overall development. And as it is, like I said, the property is unused by the city. It's really unusable for any other purpose than kind of being a part of their development. And I'm open to take any questions or any concerns.
Okay. Let's run through members of the committee, see if anybody has anything. This looks like a pretty straightforward sale of city land. Alderman Cohn.
No question.
Alderwoman Boyd.
I thought I'd never be able to say this, what Alderwoman Davis always says. I know that area very well, and I think it's a great idea. Thank you. I'm glad you all are expanding.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Guenther.
No questions.
Alderman Narayan.
No questions. Thank you.
Alderman Todd.
No question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Alderwoman Evans.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Alderwoman, thank you. Alderwoman Peel.
No questions.
Alderman Gross. Alderman Lappy.
No questions. Thank you.
Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions.
Alderwoman Walker.
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I guess I have one question. What was this parcel? What used to be here? How did the city acquire it?
Go ahead.
I don't care who answers it.
I'm sorry. Go right ahead, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I believe back in the 60s when they were widening Spring Avenue or Spring, I'm not sure if it's an avenue or street. I think the city acquired it in that process.
Okay, so we're deeding it over to the VA. I think I saw in the quick link, maybe it was like $500.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And for those who are new to the board, that under the charter, this takes a super majority to pass in order to sell city land. All right. Alderwoman or Chairwoman Davis, you recognized.
Okay, do we have a public speaker?
Well, that's a good question. Stand by. We have no public speakers.
Okay, well, I'd just like to give a little bit more detail. The new hospital that is proposed to be built there, we've been working on it for 12 years. The money was allocated and taken back 3 times, and that was because of a number of things. An invasion, a war, the pandemic. They took money back and gave it back, and for another reason, I can't remember what it was. But this is another example of nothing happens overnight, but we are very excited that our veterans will have a new facility, and it's going to be in cost over $1 billion. So I thank you for your favorable consideration.
All right, with that, the chair will entertain a motion on Board Bill 146.
I move that we pass Board Bill 146 out with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
It was moved by the Alderman from the 25th, seconded by the Alderman from the 4th, that we adopt a Board Bill 146 with a due pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cohn,
Aye.
Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Guenther,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderman Todd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans,
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel,
Aye.
Alderman Grass, Alderman Lappy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys,
Aye.
Alderwoman Walker,
Aye.
Chair Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Grass. We have 12 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustained the motion of the Alderman from the 25th and adopted Board Bill 146 with a due pass recommendation. I think that concludes the board bills listed today. Madam Chair, do you want to take over or you want me to just wrap us up?
Oh, may I take over, please?
Yes, your committee.
Okay. So and first of all, thank you for your favorable consideration of my board bills. But I also would just like to say that we're going to be very busy in the month of January, and we may even have 2 meetings a week. It's not by choice, but by need, because we have a lot of active projects moving forward. I do know that you should have received the list of items for the TIE plan, which we will have on the next agenda. And so we will talk about that. And if you have any ideas for some of those things that are listed, please forward them to the clerk's office so that they can be in our drive for our next meeting. I wanted to wish all of you a very happy holidays, however you may celebrate them, but most especially, please be safe. We have a strange world right now, and I need you to do everything you can to be aware and protect your families and yourself. With that, we need to excuse somebody.
I think everybody was here, Madam Chair. Mr. Alderman Gross dropped out, but he was here.
Oh, that's right. He was. I remember him talking. That's right. Okay. So we're good. Everybody was present. Is there anything any members needed to discuss or ask for? Any reference materials, anything? I see Alderwoman Peel. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to know when we can expect having the material about that we've been asking with SLDC for Board Bill 145. I voted present on that because I'd love to see some of the information that we requested today. And I feel that it would be important to get that information before that board bill gets to the Board of Alder to be passed out. Thank you.
Oh, I think, yes, ma'am. I think that should not be a problem. I know that some of the information that is being requested does not exist. So, and we will make sure that they indicate what does not exist, and that the does, they'll forward it to us. Okay?
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that, everything was moving forward, and I just didn't know what date that would be. So
I will not predict a date because I don't supervise or control them. We will ask them for the information. And by the time we get back, I'm pretty sure we'll have it because they got a little time. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Seeing no other concerns, we'll accept the motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn the HUS committee meeting.
Second.
Moved and second, we are adjourned. I thank you again.